Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll learn about conditional statements in Python. So there are different conditional statements or control statements in Python. The first one is simple if, then we have if else and if elif else statement. So first let's get started with the simple if statement. Let's say that I want to check whether the value 100 is stored in the variable a or not. So I want to check that one. So now I'm going to use the conditional statements and then I'm going to see. First, I'll create a variable called as a is equal to 100. Now, what I'm going to do is, I want to check whether the variable a stores the value 100 or not. So to do that one, we are going to use the simple if statement. First, the syntax is nothing but I'll say if, and then I'm going to say the variable a, that's nothing but after saying if, I need to give the condition. So what condition we are going to check? So the condition here, what I'm going to check is whether a is equal to 100. So here I'm using the double equal to symbol. That's nothing but I'm using the comparison operator over here. So a is equal to 100 and then we need to give colon over here. So the syntax is nothing but if condition and then we need to give the colon. So after this, if I press enter, you can see automatically I'll get a tab space over here. So this is called as indentation in Python. So that means whatever we are writing with the tab space, all these lines of code will belong to the if block. So here I'm going to say a print statement. Let's say the value of a is 100. Okay, so I'm going to say the value of a is 100. Now if I again come, we can even give multiple line statement inside the if block. For this program, I just want only one line. Now what I'll do is I'll come and I'll run this code. So I'm getting the output as the value of a is 100. So what will happen is, because the value of a, whatever we have assigned the value 100 to this variable a, that's why this condition has become true. So only if this condition is true, the if block will get executed. So that is, this if block will get executed over here. So if this condition is false, this will not get executed. So let's go and change the a value to 40. And now when I try to run, I'm not getting any output over here, because this condition has become false, and then that's why this print statement is not getting executed. Only if this condition is true, whatever is inside the if block, this will get executed. If the condition is false, it will not get executed. So this is the simple if statement. Next, let's see about the if else statement. So if else is nothing but if the condition is true, the if block will get executed. If the condition is false, the else block will get executed. Let's try to implement the if else for the same question. So let's say I'll press enter and then I'll come out of this if, and then what I'm going to do is I'll say else and then I'll give a colon. So after this I'll press enter. So now whatever we are writing here, this will belong to the else block. So this will get executed when this condition will become false. So here I'll say a print statement saying the value of a is not 100. Okay, so this is going to be the else block. Now when I run, you can see I'm getting the output as the value of a is not 100, because this condition is false. Now if I go and change the value of a to 100, and when I run, I'm getting the output as the value of a is 100. So this is how the if else statement will work. So if the condition is true, the if block will get executed. If the condition is false, the else block will get executed. So this is one of the very important concepts in Python programming. So what you need to be very careful over here is that the indentation. You should not write the else block inside the if. So if you try to write like this, then what will happen is it will throw an error. So you need to be very careful that after you give the if block, you need to come out of the if block. You just need to give a backspace. It will come over here. After that, you need to write the else. So this is something you need to be very, very careful. So in Python, whatever line of code we are writing inside the block will be considered with the help of this indentation. So you need to be very careful while giving the indentation and then writing these blocks. Now let's try to solve some question using these conditional statements. So the first question is nothing but I need to write a program that checks if a number is positive or negative. So first of all, let's understand how we can check a number whether it's positive or negative. So nothing but any number which is greater than 0 we'll generally consider that as positive number, and which is lesser than 0, we'll consider that as negative number, right? So now what I'll do is, I'll try to create a variable n is equal to 5, and then I'm going to write the condition. So if my n is going to be greater than 0, so I'm nothing but I'm using the conditional operator over here. So n greater than 0 is the condition, and then I'll give the colon, and then I'll come inside the block. So I'll print as if the number is going to be greater than 0, it's going to be a positive number, right? So I'll say it positive number. So I'll come out of the if block. So here I'll say else, and then I'll go inside the else block. So here I'm going to say it as if the condition is false. So obviously it's going to be a negative number, right? So I'll say it as negative number. Now I'll run. So you can see I'm getting the output as positive number because the value of n is 5. So if I give minus 10, and then if I try to run, see, I'm getting the output as negative number because the n is nothing but minus 10. So that's why this condition will become false. So the else block will eventually get executed. So this is the answer to this question. Next, we'll try to solve one more question. So create a program to check if a number is odd or even using if else. So we need to find out using the if else statement whether a number is odd or even. So before getting into the coding, we'll try to find the solution how we can try to solve this problem. So we know that all the even numbers are actually multiples of 2. So like 2, 4, 6, 8. So all these are multiples of 2. So if a number is multiple of 2, it is also divisible by 2. That means all the even numbers are perfectly divisible by 2. So for example, if we take the number 6, 6 divided by 2, it's perfectly divisible. So the output will be 3, right? So if we try to take 12, when we divide by 2, the output is going to be 6. So everything is perfectly divisible. So let's try to take this as the condition, and then let's try to solve. So whenever we are going to divide the even number by 2, the remainder is always going to be 0. So to find the remainder, we have the modulo operator. So we'll be using that. So first, let me say n is equal to 6, and then I'm going to give the condition. So if my n modulo 2, so I'm trying to find the remainder of this division, and then going to check whether that is equal to 0. So if this condition is going to be true, then I can say it is going to be an even number, right? So I'll say even number. So if this condition is going to be false, I'll come out of the if and then say else, and I'll print odd number. Now I'll execute this. So you can see I'm getting the output as even number. Since 6 is perfectly divisible by 2, when we are going to say 6 modulo 2, the answer will be 0. So this condition will become true. So that's why it's getting printed. So if I go and change my n to 13, now when I run, see the output is odd number. Since this condition will become false, because when you're going to divide 13 by 2, the remainder will be 1. So this condition will become false. So that's why the else block is getting printed. So this is how you can try to find out whether a number is odd or even using if else. Practice question. The first question is, write a program to input two numbers and then print which one is greater. So we need to get two numbers from the user and then find out which number is greater. The second question is, get an integer as input from the user and check whether it is divisible by 4 or not. So you need to solve these two questions and then print the output. Solution. So first question is, we need to get two numbers as input and then find which one is greater. So we'll try to solve. Let's consider a and b as two numbers. So a is equal to, I'm going to say int input. Let's consider input is going to be integer. So int input, enter the first number. And similarly, I'll say b is equal to, enter the second number. So these are the two inputs we are getting. So after this, I need to check, right? So which number is greater? So I'll say if a greater than b. Okay, so if a greater than b, this is going to be the condition, and then I'll give a colon, and then enter inside the if block. So here I'll say print, and then I'm going to say inside the double quotations, I'll just use the curly brackets, nothing but I'm using a string formatting. So A is greater, and then I'll say dot format, and I'll give the variable A. In case if this condition is false, then I'll come out of the if block and then say else. Here I'll say print B is greater. Okay, so in case if this condition is false, it's going to be B is going to be the greatest, right? So now I'll run. So I'm going to give two inputs. I'll say the first input as 10 and the second input as 12. So I'm getting the output as 12 is greater. So it will check 10 greater than 12. So this condition will become false. So that's why automatically the else block will get executed. So this is the solution to the first question. So the second question is, I need to get an integer as input and then check whether it is divisible by 4 or not. Okay, so I need to get one input. So let's consider that input as A. So I'll say enter the number. And now what we need to do is we need to check whether it is divisible by 4. So the concept is nothing but this is similar concept what we have used in the odd or even program. So there, to check the divisibility we need to check whether it is divisible by 2. But here we need to check whether it is divisible by 4, right? So what I'll do is I'll say A modulo 4. Okay, so nothing but I'm dividing that number by 4. So always if a number is perfectly divisible, that means the remainder will be 0. So A modulo 4, that's nothing but I'm finding the remainder. If it is equal to 0, I'll come inside the if block and then say, so the number is divisible by 4. So else I'll say print the number is not divisible by 4. Okay, so this is going to be the answer. So now I'll run. I'm going to give us 14. If I enter, I'm getting the output as it is not divisible because 14 is not divisible. So 14 divided by 4, if you see, 3 times 12 and then the remainder will be 2. So this condition will become false. So the else block is getting executed. So if I again run, I'll try to give input as 16. So now I'm getting the output as the number is perfectly divisible by 4 because 4 times 4 is 16. So that's why the output is the number is divisible by 4. So this is the solution to this question.